The episode begins with the introduction of Detective Johnson, a tough and experienced detective who has been assigned to investigate the case of a missing boy. He is joined by Emma, a new officer who is eager to prove herself. As they start their investigation, they discover that the missing boy's father, Mr. Smith, is a powerful and wealthy man who seems to be hiding something. Detective Johnson and Emma suspect that Mr. Smith may be involved in the boy's disappearance. They interview Mr. Smith, but he denies any involvement in his son's disappearance. However, Detective Johnson is not convinced and decides to keep a close eye on him. Meanwhile, Emma discovers that Mr. Smith's wife had died under mysterious circumstances a few years ago. She starts to investigate further and uncover some shocking truths about the Smith family's past. Now Episode 2. Detective Johnson. Mr. Smith, we were hoping you could help us with our investigation. Do you know if John had any enemies or potential suspects in his recent cases? John's boss. I'm sorry, I can't share confidential information about our clients. I don't want to compromise our reputation. Detective Smith. We understand that, but we're trying to solve a murder here. Any information you can provide would be helpful. John's boss. Well, I suppose I can tell you that John was working on a case involving a wealthy businessman. He had uncovered some potentially damaging information about the man, but we hadn't yet decided how to proceed. Detective Johnson. Do you have a name for this businessman? We need to follow up on this lead. John's boss hesitates for a moment, but eventually gives them the name they need. The detectives request to see footage from the arcade security camera. Detective Smith. Excuse me, do you own this arcade? We're investigating a murder and we need to see any security footage you might have. Arcade owner. I'm sorry, I can't just give you access to my cameras without a warrant or something. Detective Johnson. We understand, but we have reason to believe that the footage might help us solve this case. Can you at least tell us if there was anyone playing the machine with the camera pointed at it around the time of the murder? The arcade owner agrees to look through his footage and eventually finds something useful. The detectives investigate a seedy motel. Detective Smith. Excuse me, ma'am. We're looking for information about a man who might have been staying here recently. Can you tell us anything? Motel manager. I'm sorry, I can't share any guest information with you. It's against our policy. Detective Johnson. We understand, but we think this man might have been involved in a murder. Can you at least tell us if anything unusual happened here recently? Motel manager. Well, I suppose there was one thing. We had a group of people renting a room for a few days, but they checked out early and left a bunch of trash behind. It was pretty suspicious, if you ask me. The detectives search the room and find the note that links John to the motel. The detectives receive a call from an old informant. Informant. Hey, it's me. I overheard some guys talking about that murder you're investigating. They were saying that it was a hit job, but they didn't say much else. Detective Johnson. Can you tell us where you heard this conversation? We need to follow up on this lead. Informant. Sorry, I can't be seen giving information to the cops. But I can tell you that they were at a bar downtown. Maybe you can find out more there. The detectives head to the bar and are able to get some more information about the suspects from the people who were there that night. The detectives interview a potential suspect. Detective Johnson, excuse me, can we talk to you for a minute? We're investigating a murder and we have reason to believe that you might have some information that could help us. Suspect, I don't know anything about a murder. Why are you bothering me? Detective Smith, we're not accusing you of anything, we just need to ask you a few questions. Do you know a man named John? We believe he may have been meeting with you shortly before his death. Suspect, I know a lot of people named John. What makes you think I'm the one you're looking for? The detectives show the suspect the note they found at the motel, which seems to suggest that John had been meeting with someone at that location. The suspect's demeanor changes slightly, and he starts to become more cooperative. The detectives interview John's family. Detective Smith, we're sorry to bother you at this difficult time, but we need to ask you a few questions about John. Did he have any enemies or anyone who might have wanted to hurt him? John's wife, no, John was a good man. He was a bit of a workaholic, but he didn't have any enemies that I know of. Detective Johnson, what about his work? Did he ever mention anything about a difficult case or a client who made him nervous? John's wife, well, he was working on a big case recently, but he didn't tell me much about it. He was always very careful to keep his work and his personal life separate. The detectives thank John's family for their time and promise to keep them updated on the investigation. The detectives receive a call from the wealthy businessman they were investigating. Businessman, hello, I understand that you've been asking around about me. Is there something you'd like to discuss? Detective Johnson, yes, we're investigating a murder and we believe that you may have had some involvement. Can you tell us where you were on the night of the murder? Businessman, I'm afraid I can't do that. I have nothing to do with this murder and I don't appreciate being accused of something I didn't do. Detective Smith, we understand your position, but we have reason to believe that you might be withholding important information. If you don't cooperate, we may have to take more drastic measures. The businessman hangs up the phone, leaving the detectives with more questions than answers. Thanks for watching. We'll back soon with episode 3 #AI #ChatGPT.